Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited to open up this discussion with you all and to share some useful business continuity insights that you can leverage in your business. So before we get started, I just want to cover some basic housekeeping, and I will start off with questions. We want to encourage you all to ask away. You'll find the right-hand corner a gray sidebar. And we encourage you to leave us your questions, any comments. We will be happy to address those towards the end of the presentation. Also, we would really love it if you would all engage with us throughout the polls that we have included in this presentation. So we would love to hear your thoughts on those whenever they do come up. And then finally, do know that this is being recorded as we speak, so don't feel pressured to take notes and rush or anything. We want you to take full advantage of paying attention to all the useful insights that Nina will be sharing today. So do know that we will be sending this recording over to you as soon as this webinar is over. So without further ado, I'd like to just go over our agenda for today really quick. Okay. So before we get started, we're just going to have a quick overview of the topic, and then we're going to cover the business lessons that COVID taught the world, and then why you need business continuity planning and what it is and why you need it in your organization. And then we're going to start planning for resilience. So we definitely want to make sure that you leave this webinar with some action steps. So Nina will be providing a 4 action step roadmap that you can implement as soon as we are done today. And then, as I mentioned at the end, we will have a Q&A. So ask away. However, do keep in mind that we will be answering those until the end of the presentation, okay? So without further ado, please allow me to introduce Nina Brown, DATAMARK's Vice President of Client Solutions. I know she's super excited to be sharing these important lessons that COVID taught the world, and I know she's also super ready to share those action steps that you can take. So welcome, Nina. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Readiness. I really appreciate it, and welcome everybody. I definitely am very excited to have you join us for this event. We're even more excited to share those useful insights with you on how you can leverage the benefits of business continuity during times of crisis. Before I start with that, let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Nina Brown, and I am Vice President of Client Solutions at DATAMARK. I've spent over 20 years in the business process outsourcing arena, serving in many different capacities. Originally, I was a software engineer, developing the systems to service business processes and other functions for large companies that we help. I later served in a project management and program management capacity, working on transitioning processing functions that would solve business problems for our clients. And then later in an operational capacity, working to ensure that service levels would be met and exceeded for all servicing functions. In most recent years, I moved to my role as indicated by my title, where I now work to bring comprehensive solutions to our partners that will bring them functional and financial benefits while offering added efficiency and exceptional service for customers. So in that capacity at DATAMARK, we have worked with many Fortune 500 companies solving business problems. As a business process outsourcing company, we help large enterprises up-level their business processes to boost efficiency and dominate customer satisfaction and turn greater profits. And we've been doing that for over 30 years now. But most importantly for our topic today, we help each of our partners determine, design, and execute business continuity planning strategies so that they can be sure to continue to fulfill their customers' needs in any scenario. So that brings us to the topic. Is it too late to set up a business continuity plan? The truth is, businesses that want to survive, excuse me, any disaster, from pandemics to international conflicts to natural disasters, they need a firm understanding of business continuity planning. And I think everybody is feeling that now more than ever as day-to-day things are changing in our environments. So if you haven't done this before, then there's no better time to get started than now. You can definitely hope for the best, and we all hope for the best in any scenario, but we have to plan for the worst. So I want to share a couple of stories with you that really hit home when I heard about them, of companies that were able to really make it a success even through a disaster. So the first one is Canty Technology, and they are a company, an IT company that hosts servers for many different clients on their side. And in 2013, lightning struck the Canty Technology offices, and it caused a fire to break out. The fire torched Canty's network infrastructure, melted all their cabling, burned the computer hardware. The equipment was destroyed beyond repair, and the office was unusable. For a company whose core services are hosting servers for other companies, that situation looked bleak. But Canty's entire infrastructure, they had looked ahead, and they had planned ahead, and they had made redundant infrastructure at a remote site. And so their clients actually never knew that this happened to them at the time, thanks to them implementing that business continuity plan. It was an outcome that could have turned out very differently without that plan in place. And all it would take would be one significant on-site destruction to wipe out the entire business and the businesses of their clients if they had not had that foresight to plan ahead. So it's a great success story for averting disaster. So I like to share that. A second one that might hit home for some of you is Gale Media. They are an internet marketing strategy company. And some of you might have felt the effects of Hurricane Harvey in August of 2017. You might have lived through it. Certainly you heard about it. But when that hurricane slammed into Southeast Texas, it ravaged homes and businesses across the region. Over 4 days, some areas received more than 40 inches of rain. And by the time the storm cleared, it had caused more than $125 billion in damage. Despite that being the case, and despite being located on the second floor of the building, Gale Media, they are flooded when Lake Houston overflowed, and the flooding was so severe that nobody could enter the building for 3 months. When their staff finally came in and they saw what was left after the wreckage, any hopes for recovering the area were quickly crushed. The office had been destroyed and mold was rampant, and the company was never actually able to return to that space. They never did. But their operations were hardly affected. They had kept most of their data stored in the cloud off-site, so it allowed staff to work remotely through the storm and even after the storm went away. And even with the office shuttered down, they never lost access to their critical documents and their records. In fact, when it came time to decide where to relocate to and pick a new building, the owner ultimately decided to keep the company decentralized and allow workers to continue working from home. So that's something that became quite relative in the COVID pandemic times. And so it worked for them as well. Had they kept all their company data stored at the office, that might have been a very different picture, and they may not have ever been able to recover. So we want your organization to be another success story. Thanks to the power of business continuity planning, we believe that each company can be. That is why we want to make sure to identify the main lessons that were taught by COVID-19 and equip you with some best practices to successfully start developing a business continuity plan in your own organization so that that can be tailored to the needs of your company itself. So make sure to stick around to the end. We'll be sharing that 5-step roadmap for building that plan and putting that together. And that's what we love to do with our partners and help that business continuity planning get started to transform each organization into a resilient one. So before we get to the lessons learned, I want to hear from you all. So we have a couple of poll questions that we want to go through. So the first one is from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and they say that a certain percent of companies, large companies, spend more than 10 days each month on their business continuity planning. So if you would, use the poll functionality on your screens and put in your guess for what percent you think that is for companies. All right, so let's see what everybody said. And it looks like the majority of people say that 10%, only 10% would be spending that. Now, surprisingly, actually 20% of large companies are spending that time on their business continuity planning each month. So that's actually a good stat to hear as compared to what it could be. It could be even lower. So another poll question, according to a Touche-Ross study, they reported that there is a certain survival rate for companies without a business continuity plan. So go ahead and put in your guess into the poll of what you think that survival rate is. All right, so it looks like everybody, there's a variety here. So all over the map on this one, the majority thought it was 25% survival rate. Unfortunately, actually, the stats in this case are not that good. According to this study, only a 10% survival rate is there for companies without a business continuity plan. A few more questions we want to get your ideas on. According to a University of Texas research study, what do you think the percent of companies suffering from a catastrophic data loss is that will survive? Lock in your guesses and see what everybody has said. Looks like, the majority does rule in this particular case. According to that UT research, only 6% of companies suffering from that catastrophic data loss will survive. Same study, in terms of companies that never reopen after that catastrophic data loss, what do you think that number is? All right, let's see what everybody thought on this one. Definitely, we've got a lot of great guessers out there. 43% is the right number of companies that never reopen. Now, what about companies that do reopen, but actually end up closing within 2 years of that data loss? So they make it for a little bit of time, but can't withstand the long term. What do we think that is? 11%, 32%, 45%, 51%. All right. It looks like, again, guesses all over the map. In this case, the worst case option was actually the winner, even though we had some hoping for better than that. We do see actually 51% of companies will end up closing after 2 years after a catastrophic data loss. So thanks for participating in those polls. That takes us to really the crux of our topic today and kind of gives us a basis of why it's so important. We all want our businesses to survive, so it's really important that we make sure that we are working towards that. So a few lessons that we learned from COVID-19. Each of you probably has a list of these. Took a few of them and brought them to you. So first, we want to talk about technology. So how many of you have struggled with technology when COVID hit and things everywhere started shutting down? I'm guessing that would hit home to quite a few of you. Maybe you had some end-of-life machines, old servers, out-of-date software, inadequate networking. If you were saying yes to any of these things, you're definitely not alone. It was actually quite common. Quite often technology gets put on the back burner as long as it's still working well enough to keep the day-to-day going, then we put it to the side and wait till later. But will that really accommodate the unexpected? Well, in COVID times, quite unfortunately, many companies learned the hard way that it wouldn't. Imagine if instead you anticipated the needs of that rainy day crisis that could happen and set technology at the ready to be able to recover that day. So our very first real lesson from COVID is let's make sure that our technology is up to date and agile. Now let's talk about standard operating procedures. Chances are there are a lot of detailed processes that keep your organization running and keep things functioning the way you need them to function in order to please your customers. If you are like many other companies, a lot of the details of those processes reside in the brains of the experienced employees that are essential to your business and doing those processes every day. But what if those employees all of a sudden are no longer available? Or what if certain process details, for example, location of the process, needs to change very, very quickly? Do you know enough about all the details of your processes to be able to adjust immediately in an emergency? In thinking about SOPs, one particular situation comes to mind that we faced with one of our healthcare partners during COVID. Quite unfortunately, they had to shut down an entire operational facility overnight due to a COVID exposure incident. When that happened, they had to send everyone home immediately, and those people would no longer be able to perform the functions that required secure facilities and physical artifacts to complete. However, because of their existing relationship with us related to separate processing functions, as well as their detailed documented knowledge of the functions that were at risk, they were able to engage us immediately to take over those processes for the temporary period of time necessary while their own facility and employees were out of commission. And so in that way, they were able to keep supporting their members and patients that were sending in healthcare and needing healthcare help. They were able to keep supporting them. So that one, fortunately, turned out to be a very happy story that proves the importance of well-documented standard operating procedures. And having those standard operating procedures means not only documenting the processes once, but making sure that the documentation stays up to date over time as processes evolve, which they always do, because time will not likely be on your side when crisis hits. So the next thing we want to mention is flexibility. Research from the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that close to 1/3 of salaried employees had the ability to work from home just prior to coronavirus pandemic. And about a quarter already did so regularly. Those companies were agile in the face of COVID and thus were able to pivot with ease when COVID hit. At the same time, working from home isn't always an option in times of crisis. Organizations need to have the technology and the processes in place to ensure that work can continue from an alternate location, whether it is a work from home scenario or a different facility, or as with the story I shared a moment ago, an alternate option for who might do the processing if crisis does hit. So lesson number 4, Financial readiness is key to staying strong through economic uncertainty. In the brief window between the first known case of coronavirus emerging and the virus becoming widespread, economists were raising red flags that corporations had record levels of debt. In America, that amounted to roughly $10 trillion, or 47% of the economy. This, they feared, would not only be the end of many companies if an economic downturn hit, but a catalyst that would send the economy spiraling further. As we now know, the economic downturn did hit, and companies were scrambling to make cuts they should have made long before any alarm bells rang. That's not to say that all the organizations would end up failing, but those with little to no debt naturally fared better and will fare better in the long run. And the few with the foresight to save are in an even better position going forward. Now let's talk about risk. So all too often, organizations try to keep absolutely everything in-house and under one roof. That tends to be inefficient because many of the business processes that they're managing internally aren't really their specialty. Rather, they're simply components necessary for doing business. But if that singular facility is impacted by an unexpected event, all operations within that facility grind to a screeching halt, as many companies learned the hard way when COVID hit. And that's where our lesson 5 comes in. Putting all your eggs in one basket is never a great idea. Diversification is really the key, the time-tested key to minimize risk and outsourcing functions that are not core competencies for our businesses can be the vehicle that takes you there. Now, lessons 1 through 5 culminate to the reason we are all here and talking about business continuity and what almost every company felt through COVID times, at least to some extent. So, comprehensive business continuity planning is a must. It's estimated that as many as 1 in 4 businesses is etching out their very first business continuity plan in the wake of coronavirus. However, many companies remain unprotected, and even some with plans established still weren't prepared. Common oversights include failing to test the strategies that you plan for, and failing to plan for a variety of continuity disruptors, which we'll talk about here in a moment. But first, let's take a moment for one more poll question. I'd like to hear from you all. Which of the lessons taught by COVID resonates the most with you and your organization? Is it number 1, technology and SOPs that have to be up to date and agile? 2, the work environment flexibility. 3, financial readiness. 4, putting all your eggs in one basket. Or 5, the business continuity planning itself. All right, let's see what people responded. It looks like we have a majority is really in the work environment flexibility and closely followed in the technology and SOPs and just the planning itself as well. So great to see some people are at different levels in that and obviously thinking about different things associated with it. So what is business continuity planning exactly, and why is it important? So business continuity, in the words of Dwight D. Eisenhower, plans are meaningless, but planning is everything. So our definition is it's the process of creating that system that will address prevention and recovery methods from potential business threats. The plan outlines instructions and procedures set ahead of time and that the organization has to follow in the face of disaster. It'll cover infrastructure, employees, operations, cybersecurity, communication, all these risks that have to be thought of in order to protect and ensure continuity in all operational aspects. So what is it not? A business continuity plan can sometimes be easily confused with a disaster recovery plan. But business continuity planning is more comprehensive. It actually often incorporates the disaster plan into its whole structure, but it has more than that as well. So it actually integrates 3 key strategies rather than just the disaster recovery portion. So first is prevention. We want to make sure that we are thinking about how can we prevent and minimize any possible damage that might be caused. We also want to think about response. So if there is a disruption, if the worst does happen, how are we going to maintain productivity? How are we going to maintain critical business functions? And then lastly, recovery. So how are we going to support recovery and bring us back to a good business as usual state if disaster does hit? So let's talk about historical disasters. So in general, continuity tends to be thought of in terms of natural disasters. A fire at a facility, a blizzard, a hurricane, these things can easily damage buildings and certainly are very obvious in terms of when we think of what might slow our business down or what might make it impossible for employees to travel to their work. Coronavirus definitely taught us, all of us, an unfortunate lesson on how easy it is for an organization to be taken offline. A lot of times, almost every company has people answering phones in some way or another, maybe a whole customer contact center. If people can't answer the phones, if people can't service your customers, your clients, then that results in poor service. It results in missed opportunities for your business. It might result in worse things for your customers, depending on what your business is. If you're processing documents that people are trying to correspond with your company, there's maybe sending in payments. If your staff can't make it in and you're short-staffed, whether it's the people processing those documents or maybe it's your financial and accounting departments that are trying to adjudicate all of that, it might actually inhibit cash flow if you can't collect the cash that you need to survive. So all of these unforeseeable events, unfortunately, are a fact of life. And anything from, yes, these natural disasters, but also man-made errors can cause disruption that could take your business down and impact business continuity. So we help our partners address that through things like data mirroring, leveraging the cloud, establishing workflow recovery processes, automating processes, creating recovery assistance plans, and establishing escalation procedures so that you can continue to service your customers in the ways that they need. So I know we've talked about a lot of things, but really, why does it matter? Well, every business, no matter the size, is susceptible to that disruption. And I think we all know that now. That's probably why you joined this webinar. So some are more vulnerable than others, though, and having a specific and detailed plan in place enables you to navigate unexpected situations that can make or break your business. Many businesses simply can't afford a prolonged shutdown of operations. So that brings us to the next poll question. I'd love to hear, how many days do you feel that your business can be closed and remain viable? So 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, or more than 15. All right, let's see what your answers were. Oh, on the 2N, so it looks like for most people it's less than 5 or more than 15. Maybe that's a split between who has some disaster recovery planning in place or not, or maybe some other things. Great to hear that there are some fortunate ones out there. So unexpected events, such as severe weather events or supply chain disruptions, can cause businesses to be unable to fulfill obligations to clients, resulting in a chain reaction of lost business and maybe even negative publicity. So if you develop the business continuity planning, which includes disaster recovery, even in the middle of crisis, business owners and people, stakeholders in a company can get a better grip to be able to deal with the unexpected, allowing them to return to partial or full operation, even after event that might occur. So with good business continuity and disaster recovery planning, we can all rest more comfortably, knowing that our companies can weather the storm, if you will, forgive the pun, through adverse conditions and be able to come back on sound footing. So here's some benefits that you'll see through business continuity planning. So first off, your business will continue to function even if working environments change and other potential business disruptors. They will constantly be identified thanks to your actual planning. Also, you can get an extra layer of protection, more flexibility, swifter recovery, so you can continue to deliver that top-notch service. You can continue to focus on your customer service. Communication will be smoother. If everybody knows what they're supposed to do in a time of crisis, then you'll be that much further set to be able to act accordingly. And often that saves your organization's reputation. Your customers will respect and uphold that reputation even more, seeing how you react in times of crisis. And your company will avoid excessive downtime. There's many of you said that less than 5 days is all your company could take. That's not uncommon at all. So you would be able to avoid that downtime and then, of course, have greater peace of mind as a result. Sleep better at night. Okay, so let's talk about the actual planning and the 5 steps to planning for resilience and going through those steps to create your business continuity plan. So the first, it probably goes without saying, but the best time to create your business continuity plan is before you have a crisis. But it's okay if that didn't happen. It is never too late. I can't emphasize that enough. Never too late to start restoring order and shoring things up so that you'll be better prepared next time. And so the first step is identifying potential continuity threats. So you need to start by creating the list of potential events that might take your business offline, and then list every critical dependency. Your plan should examine likely and a few unlikely scenarios that could result in interruption of your business. Not just the obvious things, but even the things that you think might not ever happen to you. A multitude of things have the potential to derail operations. Although you may not need to account for each potential independently, it's helpful to at least consider them and think through them and the types of disruptions that could occur, and identify which aspects of your operations will be impacted by them. So a few of them that we've mentioned, and I just want to pull them all together here. So certainly pandemics, network and internet interruptions, system failures, connectivity issues, cyber attacks, malware, viruses, data losses, power outages, all those things are part of what might fall into that category. Then, of course, there's rain, snow, hail, fires, floods, earthquakes. Just to mention, floods are actually not just a weather thing. Your pipes could burst and you could be left in dire straits because of it. Crime, riots, theft, hacking, vandalism, those kinds of things, we need to be prepared just in case. And even things like transit system disruptions. So what if the bus drivers strike? What if the bridges are out, or there are road closures that prevent people from getting to work? What do we do then? So as you're thinking about all these potential disruptions, you want to make sure to have a select team of people that is diverse and understands different parts of your business to be able to brainstorm together, because you need those people really thinking about the potential disruptors. First, yes, to identify them, and then think about protection. So Benjamin Franklin said it well, an ounce of protection is better than a pound of cure. We really want to prevent these things from happening as much as possible. So that's a big part of this business continuity planning. Then you need your team thinking about how to transition should something happen, and how will communication happen should a disruption arise. So your next step in your business continuity planning is going to be performing a business impact analysis. You need to assess the potential adverse events that could affect your business. So some key factors to think of here are people, goods, and services needed to restore critical operations, crisis management roles in communication, working from home and best practices around that, if that's an option for your business, supply chain management, locations, where can your business take place? Is it onshore? Is it offshore? What are the laws and compliance regulations around the different locations that your business might be functioning? And then, of course, technology that every company uses to keep themselves going. To talk a little bit about technology, the cloud is becoming more and more the standard. So research shows that 94% of enterprises are using at least one cloud service, and that 83% of enterprise workloads are carried out in the cloud as well. So although leveraging cloud tech isn't a new trend, having it become the standard is. And it boils down to two big reasons: continuity and cost. So cloud technology increases the level of fault tolerance in a contact center, for example, in general for your business, allowing for more uptime and better disaster recovery should something happen. Also, so working with outside providers, BPO services, allows you to find the right mix of cloud technology to maximize budgets, security, the functionality itself. And when companies can leverage outsourcing services, then it frees up company resources for other tasks, such as product development and improvement of service and other core competencies for you. So step 3, develop mitigation strategies to help you transition into your plan. So how will the transition to your plan occur? Who is responsible for carrying out the steps that you determine is necessary? How can the responsible parties identify when a continuity plan should go into effect? All important questions. While you're determining all of these things, it's essential to find ways to limit the impact of the negative events on your business. So you want to be developing alternative suppliers for needed goods, maybe multiple suppliers so you're not reliant on just one. You want to discover options for outsourcing should your facilities be rendered unable to perform the needed work. You want to have a plan for temporary relocation for mission-critical people and equipment. And you want to find preventative measures, such as having IT backups, adequate fire suppression in your facility. So as you draft out all these steps, your responsible party will need that to-do list, if you will, so that they know what steps to take based upon which systems and which activities are impacted. So for example, if a tornado is active in an area of your business, the responsible party may need to move employees to an alternate location or reroute calls to a different customer service center so that every business can keep going. So step 4, and definitely not one to gloss over, test your continuity plan. You can't possibly know if your continuity plan will be effective if you don't test it. Some things may look really good on paper when you map them all out and document them, like I'm going to set up this backup server infrastructure. But then they might fail real-life tests because something was overlooked or a component isn't working correctly. So that's where testing comes in. We need to make sure to run continuity tests regularly to ensure your team is prepared and operations will not be impacted. We need to engage in exercises intended to test how effective your mitigation efforts would be in a real situation. Experts recommend that businesses test their disaster recovery and their business continuity plans at least once a year. 6 months is better. Quarterly, even better if you have the resources and budgets to accommodate that. But if you have mission critical things, you might want to consider that. Train your personnel. Often forgotten when planning, but you have to make sure that everybody knows what to do should the worst occur. They need to know what your expectations are of them, how they're going to act. You want them to know what is expected of them. So lastly, resuming normal operations. So when and how will you be able to resume your normal operations? To determine that, you need to create a written process for determining and when that is and returning to normal operations. So considering the pandemic, that process may involve doing things such as performing a deep cleaning of a building, incorporating temperature checks, social distancing, all these things that we've all become very accustomed to might be involved. But each different scenario that you analyze is going to have a different list of things necessary for returning to normal operations. So make sure to establish program maintenance and optimize your protocols to ensure that the plan is performing as expected, and then constantly make improvements if not. So we've talked about these 5 steps in the planning process, and I'd love to hear from you all where you each are in the process of implementing business continuity plans at your company. So using your poll, if you could go ahead and vote. The first, again, was the identifying potential continuity threats, performing a business impact analysis, developing mitigation strategies, and testing the continuity plan. As number 4, number 5, resuming normal operations. All right, let's see how the voting looks. Looks like most people are right in the middle of that in developing mitigation strategies. Some down over to resuming normal operations, and some just in the starting phases of identifying potential threats. A nice variety there. All right, thank you for voting. So certainly each of your businesses is unique, and consequently a business continuity plan will be different for every organization. But planning is everything. It's not easy, and it's going to take time. But I personally have witnessed many times how that planning process makes everything worth it when a disruption or an emergency does arise. If you've gone through the process of planning and have involved your teams in the detailed process of that planning, the analysis, the design, and the testing of your plan, then you will be well on your way to make the unpredictable predictable. And with that, I think we have, we set aside some time for a little bit of Q&A. If Irais, if you have, I think you were gathering some questions from people, I'd be happy to field a few if we have some time.
I see Laura asked, why isn't risk management enough?
Great question. So when we talk about risk management, that really is the process of, yes, thinking about all of those threats and mitigations for them. The biggest thing that risk management alone is missing is the testing portion. So the business continuity planning takes not just the risk assessment and what we think will mitigate, but it puts it to the test. It has real people actually going through the steps and the process to test if what you have planned for really does work. So that's where business continuity planning takes things a step further than just risk management.
Second question that Christopher asked, do I have to implement everything in one go?
Do you have to implement everything in one go? Also a great question. So a business planning continuity process is potentially very large. It really depends on the complexity of your business. So it's going to vary for everybody. If you have a very, very large enterprise with very complex business functions, there's going to be a lot to it, and it's going to take a long time to accomplish it. So you might want to take it into segments. You might want to actually have an official project within your organization that can break it down to smaller segments, because of course you're going to be working against resource constraints and budget constraints. You know, all these things have to be done kind of on the side of everybody's day job, right? So you have to make sure to still keep the business going while you're planning for the future. So sometimes it makes sense to break it down into chunks. If you have a less complex organization, you might want to just, let's do this all at once and get this together so we can make sure that we're really ready.
Okay, so Shannon has a question and she asked, who should be a part of the planning process?
So that planning process really should involve a variety of people within your organization. You do want to make sure to include cross-functional teams from different departments, as each department is likely going to be impacted differently and or have a different take on how one threat or another might impact a certain function or process. So you're talking really your operational people, your IT people, your software people, your finance people, facility people, all these different folks. HR for sure is going to be a big player in how any particular disruption might affect an organization. So you want to have at least a representative, a knowledgeable representative from all those different functional entities, but also at different levels. So people on the management side that understand the strategic level, but people at lower levels also that know about the actual processes that are happening, the actual work that has to be done and the details of it. You want to get those levels within each function as well.
Okay, so we have time for one more question. Laura wants to know if you can offer some guidelines for identifying critical business functions.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Yes, for sure. So when you're looking at trying to determine what are my critical business functions, you want to think about what are the things in my organization that support my organization's primary mission statement. Also, what supports other agencies' mission critical functions. So what might be mission critical for me alone, it may need to expand from there because other organizations might be depending on me for certain things, and that makes it mission critical as well. What in your process needs to be recovered quickly? What might have high business impact? What would have high revenue impact? What might have widespread public ramifications or implications around if I can't save a function? And what also you need to think about what might have legal or compliance ramifications if I am not able to recover something in particular. So the legal side of things and compliance is also an important piece when thinking about that. All right, so I think you said that that was going to be our last question given the time. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. We do love to work with partners to get people to a place where they are comfortable and they know that they can count on their own processes in place and partnerships with others, and they can have a solid foundation for business recovery in case of a disruption or a crisis. So if you would like any assistance on that and you want to hit that head on and prepare your business for success, we would love to connect with you. Also, if you have any other questions, my information is there. Feel free to reach out. I love to chat about these things as well. We're happy to do a free assessment with you and kind of help you just get started down the road and connect with you on that side of things. So I'd like to end out with one last poll question. Just to understand, would you like to take advantage of a free continuity planning assessment? And let us know because we'd be more than happy to help you. All right, so thank you everybody for joining us. Definitely loved talking through these things. I get very excited and passionate about it because it's so important for so many companies. So hope to hear from you and thanks for joining. Have a great rest of your day.